Commander Sarah Chen had been nursing the same glass of synthetic bourbon for 3 hours, watching the crowd in Meridian Station's most popular cantina. The establishment buzzed with the usual mix of traders, miners, and spacers from a dozen different species, their conversations creating a symphony of clicks, chirps, and guttural sounds that had become as familiar to her as her own heartbeat. She wasn't here for pleasure. Intelligence reports suggested that someone was asking questions about human settlements in the Outer Rim territories, and Command wanted to know who. Sarah's cover as an independent freight contractor had served her well for 5 years, allowing her to move freely through civilian populations while gathering intelligence for Earth's Covert Operations Division. The Kepler system had become humanity's quiet foothold in this sector, officially recognized by the Galactic Confederation as a mining operation. What the other species didn't know was that 3 of the 7 planets in the system now hosted thriving human colonies, each one carefully hidden beneath layers of technological camouflage and bureaucratic misdirection. Sarah took another sip of her drink and scanned the room again. Near the back corner, a group of Vulpine aliens had been engaged in animated conversation for the past hour. The fox-like species, known as the Kalani, were generally peaceful traders who specialized in information brokering. Their enhanced hearing and natural cunning made them excellent spies, which was exactly why Sarah was keeping an eye on them. The youngest member of the group, a female with distinctive silver fur and bright emerald eyes, had been glancing in Sarah's direction periodically throughout the evening. Each time their eyes met, the Vulpine would quickly look away, but not before Sarah caught something unsettling in her gaze. It wasn't the casual curiosity of someone people-watching. It was recognition. That was impossible. Sarah had never been to this sector before, and her current identity was completely fabricated. According to her documentation, she was Elizabeth Morrison, an independent cargo hauler from the frontier worlds. There was no way this alien could know who she really was. The Vulpine girl stood suddenly, her chair scraping against the metal floor. Her companions looked up in surprise as she began walking directly towards Sarah's table. Every instinct Sarah had developed over 15 years of intelligence work screamed at her to leave, but running would only confirm whatever suspicions the alien might have. The girl stopped 3 feet from Sarah's table and studied her with those unnervingly intelligent eyes. Up close, Sarah could see the intricate patterns in her silver fur, and the way her pointed ears twitched with nervous energy. She was young, probably barely an adult by Kalani standards, but there was something ancient in her gaze. "You are not who you claim to be," the Vulpine said softly, her words carried on the melodic accent common to her species. "Your scent betrays you, human." Sarah's hand moved instinctively toward the concealed plasma pistol at her hip, but she forced herself to remain calm. "I'm sorry, miss, but I think you have me confused with someone else. I'm just a cargo hauler trying to enjoy a quiet drink." The girl's ears flicked forward in what Sarah recognized as the Kalani equivalent of amusement. Cargo haulers do not carry military-grade neural scramblers in their jacket pockets. They do not scan room exits every 43 seconds. And they certainly do not have the distinctive metabolic signature of someone who has spent extended time in Earth's gravitational field. Sarah's blood ran cold. The neural scramblers were classified technology, and the fact that this alien could identify them by scent alone was deeply troubling. More concerning was the casual way she had mentioned Earth's gravity. Most species in this sector barely knew humans existed, let alone understood their physiological adaptations. "I think you should sit down," Sarah said quietly, gesturing to the chair across from her, "and explain how you know so much about human physiology." The Vulpine girl smiled, revealing sharp white teeth. Instead of sitting, she turned back toward her companions and raised her voice loud enough for half the cantina to hear. "Friends, gather around. I have wonderful news to share." Her emerald eyes glittered with excitement as other patrons began to take notice. "This human female sitting before us is not merely another lost wanderer from Earth's small corner of space." Sarah's heart began to race as conversations around the cantina started to die down. Whatever was about to happen, she needed to stop it before it went too far. "You need to be quiet," Sarah hissed, but the Vulpine girl ignored her completely. "No, Commander Chen, I will not be quiet. Not when I have found you at last." The use of her real name hit Sarah like a physical blow. "You see, my friends, this woman is mentioned in the oldest records of our people. The ancient texts speak of humans who would come from the third world of a yellow star, bearing the fire of their ancestors' rage." The cantina had gone completely silent now. Every alien eye was focused on their table, and Sarah could feel the weight of their attention like a physical pressure. She stood slowly, her hand moving openly toward her weapon now. "Sit down and shut up, or I will make you," she warned, but the Vulpine girl's smile only grew wider. "The prophecies tell us that when the children of Earth's fire finally reveal themselves, the old order will crumble. The lies that have kept humanity in the shadows will be exposed, and the galaxy will learn the truth about why your species was really scattered to the distant stars. Sarah's mind raced as she tried to process what she was hearing. There were no prophecies about humans. Earth had only achieved faster than light travel 200 years ago. The idea that ancient alien texts contained references to humanity was absurd, unless it wasn't. "What prophecies?" Sarah demanded, but the Vulpine girl had already turned back to address the crowd. "This woman represents the military arm of a species that has been hiding its true nature from the Galactic Confederation for over a century. While we believed humans to be primitive newcomers struggling to establish themselves in civilized space, they have been building hidden colonies, developing advanced technologies, and preparing for something that our ancestors foresaw eons ago." Murmurs of concern rippled through the crowd as various species began to back away from Sarah's table. She could see hands moving toward weapons, and the calculated way several aliens were positioning themselves to block the exits. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. "The human military designation Commander indicates rank equivalent to a Kalani pack leader or a Thrakari battle singer," the Vulpine continued, her voice carrying clearly through the now silent cantina. "She is not here by accident, friends. She is gathering intelligence for an organization that has been manipulating galactic politics from behind the scenes." Sarah realized with growing horror that everything the alien was saying was essentially correct. Humanity had been carefully concealing its true capabilities for decades, slowly building influence while maintaining the facade of being a minor species. The revelation of this strategy in a crowded cantina on a frontier world could trigger exactly the kind of galactic incident that Earth Command had spent years trying to avoid. "You have no idea what you're doing," Sarah said, drawing her weapon but keeping it pointed at the floor. "If what you're saying gets back to the major powers, it could mean war." The Vulpine girl's expression softened slightly, and for the first time since approaching the table she showed a hint of uncertainty. "War is coming whether we speak of it or not, Commander. The question is whether humanity will face it as the galaxy's hidden puppet masters, or as equal partners in what is to come." "What's coming?" Sarah demanded, but before the alien could answer, a new voice cut through the tension. Well. What do we have here?" A tall, reptilian Saurian in military uniform stepped into the cantina flanked by two heavily armed soldiers. "I received reports of seditious talk and possible terrorist activity." Imagine my surprise to find a human and a Kalani discussing ancient prophecies and military conspiracies. Colonel Vexstar was known throughout the sector as an ambitious officer looking to advance his career through any means necessary. Sarah had been briefed on him before beginning her mission, warned that he was intelligent, ruthless, and had suspected for months that human activities in the region were more extensive than officially reported. The Vulpine girl stepped protectively in front of Sarah, her fur standing on end as she bared her teeth at the approaching Saurians. "This conversation does not concern the Confederation military, Colonel." "Oh, but I think it does," Vexstar hissed, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "Discussions of hidden human colonies and ancient prophecies sound very much like the kind of intelligence that my superiors would find interesting." Sarah calculated her options quickly. The cantina had 4 exits, but Saurian soldiers were already moving to cover 3 of them. Her neural scrambler could disrupt their communications temporarily, but it wouldn't stop them from calling in reinforcements once the effect wore off. Fighting her way out would confirm everything the Vulpine girl had just revealed, but allowing herself to be captured would be even worse. "Commander Chen," the Vulpine girl whispered without turning around, "my name is Kira Silverfur. My pack has been waiting 3 generations to deliver a message to someone like you. If you trust me for the next 60 seconds, I can get us both out of here alive." Sarah had survived this long by trusting her instincts, and something about the young alien's tone convinced her to take the chance. "I'm listening." Kira's ears twitched in what Sarah now recognized as the Kalani version of a grin. "The prophecies say that humans are immune to Thrakari neural toxins. Is that true?" Sarah's enhanced metabolism could indeed process most alien neurotoxins without effect, but she had no idea how Kira could possibly know that. "Yes." "Good. When I give the signal, close your eyes and hold your breath." Kira's hand moved to a small device on her belt, and Sarah noticed that the other Kalani in the cantina were quietly moving toward the exits. Colonel Vexstar was now close enough to reach out and grab them, his scaled hand moving toward the restraint cuffs on his belt. "Both of you will come with me for questioning. Any resistance will be considered an act of aggression against the Confederation." "Colonel," Kira said sweetly, "has anyone ever told you about the Kalani gift for chemistry?" Before Vexstar could respond, Kira triggered her device and threw it toward the center of the cantina. It exploded in a burst of silver smoke that immediately sent every non-human in the establishment into convulsions. Sarah closed her eyes and held her breath as instructed, feeling the neural toxin wash over her skin without effect. The screaming and chaos lasted for 30 seconds before the smoke began to clear. When Sarah opened her eyes, she found herself alone with Kira in a cantina full of unconscious aliens. Even the Saurian soldiers were down, their weapons scattered across the floor. Thrakari neural toxin, Kira explained cheerfully as she headed toward the nearest exit. Completely harmless to humans, but it causes temporary paralysis in every other known species. We should go before they wake up. Sarah followed the Vulpine girl out into the station's main corridor, her mind reeling with questions. How did you know I would be immune? How did you know my real name? What prophecies are you talking about? All excellent questions, Kira replied as they made their way toward the docking bays. But first, we need to get off this station before Colonel Vexstar wakes up and calls for reinforcements. Do you have a ship? Yes, but I'm not going anywhere until you explain what just happened in there. Kira stopped walking and turned to face her, those emerald eyes now serious and intent. Commander Chen, what I am about to tell you will change everything you think you know about humanity's place in the galaxy. My people have been waiting for over 3 centuries to deliver this information to the right human, and tonight, finally, I have found her. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she realized that her quiet intelligence-gathering mission had just become something much larger and more dangerous. What information? The truth about why humans were really exiled from this sector of space 10,000 years ago, and why the most powerful species in the galaxy have spent millennia making sure you never learned about your own history. The station's emergency alarms began to sound in the distance, signaling that Colonel Vexstar and his soldiers were starting to recover. Sarah looked toward her docking bay, then back at Kira's expectant face, and made a decision that would alter the course of human destiny. Ship's this way, she said, and began to run. Sarah's ship, the merchant vessel Phoenix Rising, was a modified Cerberus-class freighter that looked unremarkable from the outside but contained enough hidden weaponry and defensive systems to take on a Confederation patrol cruiser. As they ran through the docking bay, she could hear security forces mobilizing behind them, their boots echoing through the station's corridors. "Get us clearance for immediate departure," Sarah shouted to Kira as they reached the ship's airlock. "Can you hack station systems?" "Better than that," Kira replied, pulling out a small crystalline device. "I can make them think we never existed." She pressed the crystal against the airlock's control panel, and Sarah watched in amazement as lines of alien text began scrolling across the display at impossible speed. Within seconds, the airlock cycled open and they rushed inside. Sarah headed straight for the bridge while Kira continued working with her mysterious device. The ship's automated systems came online as Sarah dropped into the pilot's chair, but before she could begin launch procedures, Kira's voice stopped her. "Wait. Before we leave, there's something you need to see." The Vulpine girl had connected her crystal to the ship's main computer, and holographic displays were now showing data streams that Sarah didn't recognize. "These are the real station records, Commander. Look at the passenger manifests for the last 6 months." Sarah studied the scrolling text, and her blood ran cold. Hidden among the routine commercial traffic were dozens of ships registered to dummy corporations that she knew were actually human intelligence assets. Every one of her colleagues operating in this sector was listed, along with detailed profiles that should have been impossible for anyone outside Earth Command to compile. "How did they get this information?" she whispered. "They didn't get it," Kira replied grimly. "They've always had it. The Confederation has been tracking human activities since your first ships entered this sector, but they've been pretending ignorance for reasons I'll explain once we're safely away from here." Alarms began blaring throughout the docking bay as Confederation security forces started sealing the station. Sarah initiated the launch sequence, feeling the ship's engines respond with their familiar low rumble. Buckle in. This is going to be rough." The Phoenix Rising lifted off just as blast doors began closing around their docking port. Sarah pushed the engines to maximum acceleration, threading the needle between descending blast shields with mere meters to spare. Once they cleared the station's superstructure, she engaged the ship's cloaking system and altered course toward the edge of the star system. "Impressive flying," Kira commented as she secured herself in the co-pilot's chair. "The prophecies mentioned that humans would be natural pilots, but I didn't expect such precise control. Stop talking about prophecies and start explaining," Sarah demanded as she set the autopilot for a course that would take them beyond sensor range. "Who are you really? How do you know so much about human operations?" And what's this about us being exiled 10,000 years ago? Kira was quiet for a long moment, her ears flicking back in what Sarah now recognized as a sign of distress. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight that seemed far too heavy for someone so young. My true name is Kira Tel Silverfur, and I am the last surviving member of the Kalani Historical Preservation Society. My people have been the galaxy's memory keepers for over 50,000 years, recording events and maintaining archives that other species prefer to forget. What I'm about to tell you is the most closely guarded secret in galactic history. The main display flickered as Kira accessed files from her crystal device. Ancient star charts appeared, showing stellar configurations that predated human faster-than-light travel by millennia. In the center of the display was a familiar yellow star with 9 planets orbiting around it. 10,000 years ago, Earth was not an isolated world at the edge of civilized space. It was the capital of the largest and most technologically advanced empire the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity ruled over 200 star systems and commanded the respect of every major species. Sarah stared at the display in disbelief. That's impossible. Human archaeological records go back less than 10,000 years, and there's no evidence of advanced technology from that period, because it was all deliberately erased. Kira manipulated the controls, and the star chart transformed to show the locations of ancient battles. Humanity's empire fell not through conquest or natural decline, but through the most sophisticated campaign of historical revision ever undertaken. A coalition of alien species, led by the ancestors of today's Confederation Council, systematically destroyed every trace of human civilization beyond Earth itself. New images appeared showing massive space battles and the systematic demolition of what looked like human cities on distant worlds. Sarah watched in growing horror as entire planets were sterilized, their surfaces scoured clean of any evidence that humans had ever lived there. They called it the Great Forgetting, Kira continued. Over the course of 3 centuries, the Coalition forces eliminated every human settlement, space station, and technological artifact outside the Sol system. They even altered stellar cartography to make it appear that humans had never achieved interstellar travel. But why? Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. Why would they go to such lengths? Because humanity terrified them. The display now showed what appeared to be technical schematics for devices Sarah couldn't identify. Your species possessed 3 capabilities that threatened the established galactic order. First, humans could adapt to virtually any environment without genetic modification. Second, they had developed a form of faster-than-light communication that didn't rely on the galactic network controlled by other species. And third, Kira paused, her emerald eyes meeting Sarah's with an intensity that made the human woman uncomfortable. Third, humans had learned how to permanently alter the fundamental properties of matter itself. What your ancestors called quantum forging allowed them to create materials and technologies that other species considered impossible. The Coalition feared that given enough time, humanity would eventually dominate the entire galaxy. Sarah's engineering training kicked in as she studied the schematics. Some of the principles looked familiar, but others seemed to violate basic laws of physics. These designs, they're showing energy conversion rates that should be impossible. Nothing is impossible for a species that can rewrite reality at the quantum level, Kira replied. But the Coalition found a way to stop you. They couldn't destroy Earth itself without triggering a galactic war, so they did something far more insidious. They erased your history and waited for your civilization to collapse from within. How? By removing all record of your achievements, they condemned humanity to repeat the same developmental mistakes over and over again. Without knowledge of your previous technologies, each new generation had to rediscover everything from scratch. It took your species almost 9,000 years to achieve interstellar travel again, and even now you're operating at a fraction of your former capability. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. If what Kira was saying was true, then humanity's current struggle to establish itself among the galactic powers wasn't the natural growing pains of a young species. It was the result of deliberate sabotage that had lasted for millennia. The prophecies my people preserved predicted that eventually humans would reach a critical point in their redevelopment. When that happened, the truth would have to be revealed to prevent the Coalition from implementing their final solution, which is complete extermination. Kira's words were spoken quietly, but they echoed through the bridge like a death sentence. The Coalition has been monitoring human progress for centuries, waiting for you to approach the technological level of your ancestors. Once that happens, they plan to eliminate Earth and all human colonies to prevent the cycle from repeating. Sarah felt the deck plates vibrate as the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler system. Through the main viewport, she could see the distant lights of human colonies that officially didn't exist. Thousands of families were down there living their lives in complete ignorance of the threat hanging over their species. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Based on your current rate of technological advancement, the Kalani archives estimate that humanity will reach the critical threshold within 50 years. Possibly sooner if your hidden research projects continue to accelerate." "What research projects?" Kira gave her a look that was equal parts sympathetic and apologetic. "Commander, surely you don't think that Earth Command's quantum computing program developed in isolation? Or that your new faster-than-light communication arrays were invented without outside influence?" Sarah's blood turned to ice as she realized the implications. "Someone's been helping us. Several someones, actually. There are species within the Coalition that never fully supported the Great Forgetting. They've been secretly providing technological assistance to humanity, hoping to restore the balance of power in the galaxy before the Coalition makes its final move. And that's why you found me tonight. Because I represent Earth Command's Intelligence Division. Partially." Kira hesitated, then reached into her jacket and withdrew a small metal object that looked like a crystalline data storage device. "But mostly because our archives identified you specifically as someone who would be crucial to humanity's survival. According to the prophecies, Commander Sarah Chanaverse Intelligence Forces would be the one to unite the hidden human colonies and forge an alliance with the Coalition's enemies." Sarah stared at the device in Kira's hands, recognizing the quantum resonance patterns etched into its surface. She had seen similar technology in classified Earth Command laboratories, but the craftsmanship of this device was far more advanced than anything humanity could currently produce. "What is it?" "A quantum forge," Kira replied, placing the device on the console between them. "One of the few remaining artifacts from humanity's first empire. It contains the complete technical specifications for rebuilding your ancestral technologies, including the faster-than-light communication network that will allow you to coordinate with human colonies across the galaxy." "Why give this to me? If the Coalition finds out that these technologies still exist, then war becomes inevitable." Kira's ears flicked forward in grim determination. "But war is coming anyway, Commander. The only question is whether humanity will face it as scattered refugees or as the technological powerhouse your species was meant to be." Sarah picked up the quantum forge, feeling the weight of 10,000 years of hidden history in her hands. The device was warm to the touch, and she could sense complex energy patterns flowing through its crystalline structure. It felt alive in a way that human technology never did. "There's something else," Kira continued. "The Coalition isn't the only threat you'll be facing. During the Great Forgetting, some human colonies escaped destruction by fleeing to the Galactic Rim. They've spent 10 millennia developing their own technologies and building their own empire. When they learn that Earth still exists, they may see your people as collaborators with the species that destroyed their ancestors. How many of them are there? We don't know. Our last contact with the Rim colonies was over 3,000 years ago. They could number in the millions, or they could have destroyed themselves through internal conflict. But if they've survived and maintained their technological base, they represent either humanity's greatest ally or its most dangerous enemy." Sarah activated her ship's communication array and began composing an encrypted message to Earth Command. Everything about their current situation had just changed, and Command needed to know about the threats they were facing. "Commander," Kira said softly, "before you contact your superiors, there's one more thing you should know. The Coalition has agents within Earth's government and military. The information I've shared with you tonight will reach the Ralniers within hours of transmission. Then how do we proceed? Carefully, and with allies you can trust absolutely." Kira stood and moved to the navigation console. "I'm going to give you coordinates for a star system that doesn't appear on any official charts. There's a research facility there that was established by Coalition dissidents 300 years ago. They've been waiting for this day as long as my people have." Sarah studied the coordinates Kira had entered. The location was deep in a region of space that human surveys had marked as uninhabitable. "What kind of research are they doing?" "They're preparing for the war that's coming, Commander. And they've been building weapons that even the Coalition fears." As the Phoenix Rising changed course toward the hidden coordinates, Sarah realized that her quiet intelligence mission had just become something much larger. She was no longer just gathering information about enemy activities. She was about to become a key player in a conflict that had been brewing for 10,000 years, and the survival of the human species hung in the balance. The quantum forge pulsed with warm light on the console beside her, containing the keys to technologies that could either save humanity or destroy it. Either way, there would be no going back to the simple life of a covert operative gathering intelligence in frontier cantinas. The real war was just beginning. The journey to the hidden research facility took 18 hours, during which Kira shared more details about humanity's forgotten empire and the coalition that had orchestrated its destruction. Sarah learned that the Great Forgetting hadn't been merely an act of conquest, but a carefully planned operation that had taken centuries to execute and required the cooperation of over 40 different species. The most insidious part, Kira explained as they approached the coordinates, was how they turned your own people against each other. By the time the coalition forces arrived at each human world, local populations had already been convinced that Earth had abandoned them or that other human colonies posed existential threats. Sarah studied the tactical reports that Kira had downloaded from the colony archives, seeing patterns of manipulation that were disturbingly familiar. They used the same psychological warfare techniques that modern intelligence agencies employ: disinformation, false flag operations, manufactured conflicts, except they had thousands of years to perfect their methods, Kira replied. By the time humanity realized what was happening, it was too late to mount a coordinated defense. The Phoenix Rising sensors detected the hidden facility as they approached a seemingly empty region of space. What had appeared to be background radiation resolved into a massive structure that had been completely invisible to conventional scanning methods. The station was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen, its architecture combining design elements from dozens of different species into something that was both beautiful and vaguely threatening. "Welcome to Sanctuary Station," Kira announced as docking instructions appeared on their communication array. Built by the Coalition of Free Peoples 3 centuries ago as a refuge for species that opposed the Confederation's expansion policies. Coalition of Free Peoples? The Coalition's enemies gave themselves a dramatic name, Kira said with what Sarah was learning to recognize as Kalani humor. They're not as organized as the Confederation Council, but they've been working toward the same goal for generations, preventing any single power from dominating the galaxy. The docking procedures were handled by automated systems that scanned the Phoenix Rising with technology Sarah couldn't identify. When they finally received clearance to dock, the hangar bay they entered was large enough to hold a dozen ships the size of theirs, yet only 2 other vessels were currently berthed there. As they disembarked, Sarah was struck by the station's artificial gravity and atmospheric composition. Both felt perfectly calibrated for human physiology, which seemed like an odd coincidence until she remembered that this facility had been built specifically to prepare for humanity's return to galactic prominence. Their reception committee consisted of 3 individuals who represented species Sarah had never encountered before. The first was a tall, crystalline being whose body seemed to be composed of living mineral formations that shifted and reformed as they moved. The second appeared to be some kind of energy creature that maintained a roughly humanoid shape within a containment field. The third was surprisingly familiar, a human woman in her 50s with graying hair and the unmistakable bearing of a military officer. "Commander Chen," the human woman said, stepping forward with an extended hand. "I'm Admiral Elizabeth Reyes, formerly of Earth Fleet Command. Welcome to the most important briefing of your career." Sarah shook the offered hand, noting the Admiral's callous palms and the way she carried herself. This was someone who had seen real combat, not just desk duty. "Formerly Admiral? I died in a shuttle accident 6 months ago, according to official records. In reality, I was extracted by our friends here when it became clear that Coalition agents had identified me as a security risk." Reyes gestured toward her alien companions. "Commander, meet Zephyrtel of the Crystalline Concordate and Flux of the Energy Collective. They represent 2 of the most technologically advanced species in this galaxy, and they've been waiting a very long time to meet someone like you." The crystalline being stepped forward, and when they spoke, their voice resonated with harmonics that Sarah felt in her bones. "Commander Chen, we have been monitoring your career with great interest. Your psychological profile and tactical capabilities match those predicted by the ancient archives for one who would help humanity reclaim its rightful position." "Flux," the energy being flickered and shifted before speaking in a voice that sounded like controlled lightning. "We bring greetings from species that remember humanity's first empire and have never forgotten the debt owed to your people for the technologies you shared freely with all who asked." Sarah looked between her hosts, trying to process the implications of what she was hearing. "You're telling me that humanity's ancient empire actually helped other species? That doesn't match what Kira told me about the Coalition's fears. The Coalition lied about many things," Admiral Reyes replied. "Yes, humanity was technologically dominant, but the historical record shows that human colonies consistently shared their advances with allied species. The quantum forging techniques that terrified the Coalition were actually developed in partnership with beings like Zephyrtel and Flux." Zephyrtel's crystalline form shifted into what might have been the equivalent of a nod. Human creativity combined with our species' understanding of quantum mechanics and the energy collective's mastery of field dynamics, together we achieved breakthroughs that none of our peoples could have accomplished alone. So why did the Coalition destroy everything? Sarah asked. Because they couldn't control it, Flux replied, their energy field crackling with apparent anger. The Coalition species built their power on scarcity and technological dependence. They maintained control by ensuring that only they possess certain key technologies, forcing other species to trade and negotiate for access. Humanity's approach of open innovation threatened to make their entire system obsolete. Admiral Reyes led the group toward the station's central hub, passing through corridors lined with technology that seemed to blend science and art into something approaching magic. The facility you're seeing now represents 300 years of preparation for humanity's return. Every major system here incorporates principles from your ancestral quantum forging techniques, rebuilt from archived data and improved through collaboration with our allied species. They entered a vast central chamber where holographic displays showed real-time information from across the galaxy. Sarah could see fleet movements, resource allocations, and what appeared to be battle plans on a scale that dwarfed anything Earth Command had ever attempted. "This is our war room," Reyes explained. "For the past 50 years, we've been tracking Coalition preparations for what they call the final pacification. Their plan is to eliminate Earth and all human colonies in a coordinated strike that will look like a natural disaster or alien invasion. No evidence, no survivors, no possibility of retaliation." Sarah studied the tactical displays, recognizing some of the human colony locations but seeing others that were completely unknown to her. "How many human settlements are there really?" "According to our intelligence, Earth Command has established official colonies on 43 worlds and maintains covert operations on at least 60 more. But that's not counting the settlements established by refugees who escaped Earth during the darker periods of your recent history, or the trading posts that have grown into small communities without official recognition. So we're talking about millions of people, closer to 50 million, spread across over 200 star systems." Zephyrtel's crystalline form shifted to display a three-dimensional map showing the true extent of human expansion. Many more than the Coalition realizes, but still vulnerable to coordinated attack if they maintain their current defensive postures. Kira stepped forward, her expression more serious than Sarah had seen since they'd met. "This is why the quantum forge I gave you is so important, Commander. Without faster-than-light communication that bypasses the Coalition's monitoring network, human colonies cannot coordinate their defenses or even warn each other of impending attacks." Flux's energy field pulsed with what seemed like excitement. The quantum forge contains not just communication technology, but the fundamental principles needed to rebuild humanity's defensive capabilities. Force field generators that can protect entire planets, weapons that can disable Coalition fleets without destroying them, and manufacturing systems that can create these devices from common stellar materials. Sarah picked up the quantum forge from her equipment pack, feeling its warm pulse of energy. How long would it take to implement these technologies? "That depends on how much support Earth Command is willing to accept from unconventional allies," Admiral Reyes replied. "If they're willing to work with non-human species and abandon some of their current security protocols, we could have a basic defense network operational within 6 months. If they insist on maintaining current policies, years," Zephyrtel completed, "and time is a resource we do not possess in abundance." "Show her the timeline," Kira said quietly. Admiral Reyes manipulated the central display, and Sarah watched in growing horror as Coalition fleet movements resolved into a clear pattern. Warships from multiple species were converging on positions that would allow them to strike at every major human settlement simultaneously. "The final pacification will begin in 14 months, Reyes explained. "Our intelligence suggests they're waiting for humanity to achieve a specific technological milestone that will trigger their activation protocols. Ironically, that milestone is the successful implementation of faster-than-light communication networks. So the moment we deploy the technology we need to coordinate our defense, they'll attack," Sarah said grimly, "unless we're ready for them." Flux's energy field brightened. The quantum forge contains more than defensive technologies. It also includes offensive capabilities that the Coalition has never encountered. Weapons that can turn their own ships against each other, viruses that can corrupt their communication networks, and manufacturing techniques that can create autonomous defense platforms faster than they can be destroyed. Sarah studied the tactical projections, her military training identifying both opportunities and risks in the proposed strategies. "What about the rim colonies that Kira mentioned? If there are human settlements out there with 10,000 years of independent development, they could tip the balance either way. That's actually why you're here, Commander. Admiral Reyes said. We need someone with official Earth Command authority to make contact with the Rim colonies and determine whether they can be trusted as allies. Someone who can carry the quantum forge technologies to them and help coordinate a unified human response to the Coalition threat.
And if they're hostile?
Then humanity faces enemies on all fronts, Zephyr said bluntly. The Rim colonies have had millennia to develop their own technologies and form their own alliances. If they view Earth as a collaborator with their ancient enemies, they may see the Coalition's final pacification as an opportunity to settle old scores. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a physical burden. The decision she made in the coming weeks could determine whether humanity survived as a free species or joined the forgotten civilizations that the Coalition had eliminated over the millennia. There's something else you need to know, Kira said, her ears flicking back in distress. The Coalition has agents among our allied species as well. Not everyone who opposes Confederation policies is necessarily friendly to humanity. Some of our supposed allies may be working toward their own agenda for human technologies. Meaning, some species want to see humanity restored to power because they believe they can control or manipulate a rebuilt human empire, Flux explained. Others genuinely support human independence but have their own territorial ambitions that could conflict with human expansion. And a few are playing multiple sides, hoping to emerge as the dominant power once the current order collapses. Admiral Reyes activated a secure communication terminal and handed Sarah an encrypted datapad. Your orders, Commander. This contains contact protocols for 12 human colonies that Earth Command doesn't officially know about, along with navigation data for reaching the Rim territories. You'll also find authorization codes that will identify you to any human military personnel you encounter, regardless of their chain of command. Sarah reviewed the orders, noting that they came with virtually unlimited authority to make strategic decisions on behalf of humanity as a whole. These give me power to negotiate treaties and military alliances without oversight. Because there won't be time for oversight, Reyes replied. The Coalition's timeline doesn't allow for bureaucratic approval processes or committee reviews. You'll need to make decisions quickly and trust your instincts about who can be trusted. What about Earth Command? Don't they need to know what's happening? They'll be informed through secure channels once you've established contact with the Rim colonies and confirmed whether they represent an additional threat or a potential ally. Until then, the fewer people who know about this mission, the better our chances of maintaining operational security. Zephyr extended one of their crystalline appendages towards Sarah. Commander, we offer our species resources to support your mission. Our ships can travel undetected through Coalition space, and our manufacturing capabilities can produce quantum forge devices faster than any known technology. Flux's energy field pulsed in agreement. The Energy Collective pledges its support as well. Our people can provide power sources and defensive systems that will protect human colonies during the reconstruction period. Sarah looked around the war room at the assembled representatives of 3 species that had been working for centuries to prepare for this moment. The magnitude of what they were asking her to do was almost overwhelming, but the alternative was the extinction of her species. When do we leave for the Rim territories? She asked. Tomorrow, Admiral Reyes replied. Kira will accompany you as a liaison to ensure that Kalani historical archives remain available for verification of any claims made by the Rim colonies. The journey will take approximately 3 months using conventional faster-than-light travel. And if the Rim colonies are hostile, Reyes' expression hardened, then you'll have 3 months to prepare for the possibility that humanity's greatest enemy isn't the Coalition that destroyed our first empire, but the descendants of those who survived its fall. Sarah activated the quantum forge, watching as its crystalline surface began to glow with warm, pulsing light. Whatever happened in the Rim territories, humanity's future would be decided by the choices she made in the coming months. The galaxy was about to learn whether the children of Earth's fire could rise from the ashes of their forgotten empire, or if 10,000 years of suppression had finally broken the human spirit beyond repair. The journey to the Rim territories aboard the Phoenix Rising was unlike anything Sarah had experienced in her 15 years of space travel. Zephyr had provided quantum drive modifications that allowed the ship to travel through dimensions that conventional physics insisted didn't exist, cutting their travel time from months to weeks while maintaining complete stealth from Coalition monitoring systems. Kira spent the journey teaching Sarah to interface directly with the quantum forge, revealing that the device wasn't just a repository of ancient technology, but an active artificial intelligence that had been learning and adapting for 10,000 years. The forge had memories of humanity's first empire, and contained the personalities and knowledge of human scientists who had uploaded their consciousness before the Great Forgetting. The forge chooses its users, Kira explained during one of their training sessions. It won't activate for just anyone with human DNA. It responds to specific psychological patterns and moral frameworks that match those of humanity's greatest leaders from the ancient period. Sarah had discovered that when she touched the device, she could access vast databases of information about technologies, battle tactics, and even personal messages from humans who had died millennia before Earth developed writing. It was both inspiring and deeply unsettling to communicate with the ghosts of her species' forgotten past. 3 weeks into their journey, they encountered their first sign that the rim territories were inhabited. Long-range sensors detected artificial structures orbiting a red dwarf star, structures that used energy signatures unlike anything in Coalition or Earth Command databases. When they approached for closer examination, they were intercepted by a ship that appeared to materialize out of empty space. The vessel that hailed them was clearly of human origin, but its design incorporated principles that Earth's engineers were only beginning to understand. It was simultaneously sleek and organic-looking, as if it had been grown rather than built, and it moved through space with a grace that suggested complete mastery of gravitational manipulation. "Unknown vessel, you are entering the sovereign territory of the Terran Dominion," came a voice over the communication channel, speaking in accented English that sounded like it had evolved separately from Earth's languages for centuries. "State your origin and purpose, or be destroyed." Sarah activated the ship's communication array, her heart racing as she realized they had found what they were looking for. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of Earth Fleet Intelligence, aboard the merchant vessel Phoenix Rising. I carry authorization codes from Earth Command and request permission to speak with your leadership about matters of mutual security." There was a long pause before the response came. "That's unexpected. Stand by for escort to Bastion Station. Any deviation from the prescribed course will result in immediate destruction." The escort ship guided them through a navigation route that revealed the true scope of rim territory development. They passed mining operations that were extracting resources from the hearts of asteroids using technology that defied conventional understanding of physics. Massive space habitats rotated slowly in the void, each one large enough to house millions of people. Most impressive were the defensive installations, weapon platforms that looked like they could destroy entire fleets without breaking a sweat. "They've done well for themselves," Kira observed as they approached Bastion Station, a structure that dwarfed anything Earth Command had ever constructed. 10,000 years of uninterrupted development has produced capabilities that might surpass even humanity's first empire. Bastion Station was a city in space, its architecture incorporating artistic elements that were recognizably human, but expressed in ways that Earth's cultures had never explored. When they docked, Sarah was surprised to be met by a delegation that included not just humans but several alien species she didn't recognize. The lead representative was a woman who appeared to be in her 40s, with a kind of augmented features that suggested extensive genetic modification. Her eyes glowed with a subtle silver light, and when she moved there was something predatory and efficient about her grace that reminded Sarah of enhanced soldiers from Earth's Special Forces programs. "I am Admiral Vera Castellanos of the Terran Dominion Strategic Command," the woman said, extending a hand in greeting. "Commander Chen, your arrival raises questions that we weren't expecting to address for several more decades. Earth Command was supposed to be extinct by now." Sarah shook the offered hand, noting the woman's enhanced strength and the way her silver eyes seemed to analyze everything they saw. "Reports of our extinction have been greatly exaggerated, Admiral, though it may not be for much longer if certain threats aren't addressed." "Walk with me," Castellanos said, leading them through corridors that were simultaneously familiar and alien. The architecture was definitely human, but it incorporated design principles that Earth had never developed. "Tell me about these threats and explain why someone from Earth Command is carrying a Kalani information broker into our territory." As they walked, Sarah explained everything that had happened since Kira's revelation in the cantina. She described the Coalition's final pacification plan, the hidden research facility, and the quantum forge that contained their species' forgotten technologies. Admiral Castellanos listened without interruption, but Sarah could see the woman's expression growing increasingly grim. "Show me this quantum forge," Castellanos said when Sarah finished her explanation. Sarah activated the device, watching as its crystalline surface began to glow and project holographic displays showing technical specifications for technologies that the Terran Dominion had clearly never seen before. Castellanos studied the projections with obvious expertise, her silver eyes recording every detail. "Fascinating. We've spent 10 millennia developing our own versions of quantum manipulation technology, but these designs are far more elegant than anything we've achieved." Castellanos manipulated the holographic displays with casual competence, as if she was accustomed to working with similar interfaces. "The consciousness uploads are particularly impressive. We abandoned that research centuries ago, after too many psychological failures." "You tried to upload human consciousness?" Kira asked, her ears perked with interest. "Among other things. The Terran Dominion has spent considerable effort trying to reconnect with our lost heritage, but without access to the original archives, we've had to rediscover everything through trial and error. Castellanos led them into what was clearly a command center, where dozens of humans and aliens worked at stations monitoring activities across multiple star systems. Much of what you've shown me fills gaps in our historical knowledge that we've been trying to reconstruct for generations. Sarah studied the command center, noting that the alien species present were unlike any she had encountered in Coalition space. These aren't Confederation races. No, they're refugees from species that the Confederation eliminated over the past 10,000 years. The Terran Dominion has served as a sanctuary for any people fleeing Coalition expansion, just as our ancestors once found refuge here when Earth was betrayed. Castellanos activated a large central display, showing a map of local space that revealed the true scope of the Dominion's territory. We currently control over 300 star systems and maintain defensive alliances with 12 other refugee civilizations. The map was staggering in scope. The Terran Dominion had built an empire that rivaled anything the Coalition controlled, and they had done it while remaining completely hidden from the galactic mainstream. Sarah began to understand why Admiral Reyes had been concerned about whether the Rim colonies would be allies or enemies. "What is the Dominion's relationship with Earth?" Sarah asked carefully. Castellanos' expression hardened. Complicated. "Our founders escaped the Great Forgetting by fleeing to the Galactic Rim, but they carried with them the knowledge that Earth's government had failed to warn its colonies about the Coalition threat. For 10,000 years we believed that Earth had either been destroyed or had collaborated with our enemies. And now? Now we learn that Earth survived and has been secretly rebuilding, apparently in cooperation with the same alien species that our ancestors fought against." Castellanos gestured toward Kira. "Forgive me if we're not immediately willing to trust Earth Command's judgment about allies." Sarah realized that she was walking into exactly the kind of diplomatic minefield that Admiral Reyes had warned her about. The Terran Dominion had legitimate grievances against Earth, but they also represented humanity's best hope for survival against the Coalition threat. "Admiral, I understand your concerns, but the situation has changed dramatically. The Coalition is planning to eliminate all human settlements within the next year. Earth, the Dominion, and every human colony in between will be destroyed unless we can coordinate a unified defense." "And you believe that working with alien allies is the solution?" Castellanos asked skeptically. "The same approach that failed our ancestors 10,000 years ago? The alien allies are different this time," Kira interjected, speaking for the first time since they had boarded the station. "The species that support humanity now are those who oppose the Great Forgetting and have spent millennia preparing to prevent its repetition." Castellanos turned those silver eyes toward Kira with an intensity that made the Vulpine girl step backward. "And what exactly is a Kelani information broker's interest in human survival? What does your species gain if we successfully resist the Coalition?" "Freedom," Kira replied simply. "The Coalition's control model depends on maintaining technological and information monopolies. If humanity returns to its former capabilities, it will break those monopolies and create opportunities for species like mine to achieve true independence. A reasonable answer, but not necessarily an honest one." Castellanos activated controls that sealed the command center's entrances. "Commander Chen, there are things about the current galactic situation that your Earth Command allies haven't told you, information that might change your perspective on who can be trusted." Sarah felt tension building in the room as armed guards took positions near the exits. "What kind of information?" "The Coalition's final pacification plan isn't designed to eliminate humanity. It's designed to force humanity into a position where they'll accept Coalition protection in exchange for submitting to technological control." Castellanos brought up new displays showing intelligence reports that Sarah had never seen. "They want to preserve human innovation capacity while ensuring that humans never again threaten Coalition dominance." "That doesn't make sense." Kira's people have documentation showing that the Coalition plans to sterilize all human worlds. Kira's people have documentation showing what the Coalition wants certain parties to believe. Castellanos' voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. "The Kalani archives are genuine, but they don't contain the Coalition's actual plans. They contain disinformation designed to provoke exactly the kind of response you're implementing." Sarah looked at Kira, whose ears had flattened against her skull in what she now recognized as a sign of extreme distress. "Is that true?" I don't know," Kira whispered. "The archives have been maintained by my family for generations. If they contain false information, then someone has been manipulating the Kalani for a very long time," Castellanos finished, "which raises the question of who benefits from convincing Earth Command that they need to rapidly deploy ancient human technologies in cooperation with alien allies." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. If the Coalition was actually planning to preserve humanity while controlling them, then the quantum forged technologies could be exactly what they needed to complete their subjugation plan. By helping Earth Command deploy faster-than-light communication networks and advanced manufacturing capabilities, the Coalition might be positioning themselves to take control of those systems at the critical moment. But the species at Sanctuary Station, Sarah protested. They've been preparing for centuries to help humanity resist Coalition control, or they've been preparing for centuries to be in position to control humanity when the time was right, Castellanos replied. Commander, the Terran Dominion has survived for 10 millennia by trusting no one completely and verifying everything independently. We'd like to help Earth resist Coalition control, but not at the cost of handing human technology to alien species that might have their own agenda. Sarah realized that her mission had just become exponentially more complicated. She had come to the Rim territories hoping to forge an alliance against the Coalition, only to discover that her potential allies didn't trust each other and had fundamentally different assessments of the threat they were facing. "What do you propose?" she asked. "A test," Castellanos replied. "We'll help you determine whether your alien allies are genuinely committed to human independence. But if they fail that test, you'll need to choose between trusting Earth Command's judgment and trusting the survival instincts that have kept the Terran Dominion free for 10,000 years. Sarah looked at the quantum forge in her hands, realizing that the device that was supposed to save humanity might actually be the key to its subjugation. Everything she thought she knew about the galactic situation was now in question, and the wrong decision could doom her species to either extinction or eternal servitude. "What kind of test?" she asked, knowing that whatever Admiral Castellanos had in mind would force her to confront the possibility that everything she had been told was a lie. Admiral Castellanos led Sarah and Kira to a secure briefing room deep within Bastion Station's command structure, where they were joined by 3 other high-ranking Dominion officers. Each bore the subtle signs of genetic and technological enhancement that seems standard among Rim territory humans. Enhanced reflexes, improved sensory capabilities that spoke of centuries of technological advancement. "The test I'm proposing is simple in concept, but potentially catastrophic in implementation," Castellanos began, activating a holographic display that showed real-time positions of Coalition fleets throughout the galaxy. "We're going to force your alien allies to choose between preserving their cover and protecting human lives." "How?" Sarah asked, though she was beginning to suspect she wouldn't like the answer. "By revealing the location of this station to Coalition forces and seeing how quickly the information reaches the fleet commanders who were supposedly preparing for the final pacification." Castellanos manipulated the display to show communication pathways between various alien species. "If your allies are genuinely committed to human independence, they'll either warn us about the compromise or help us prepare defenses. If they're working toward their own agenda, they'll let the Coalition attack Bastion Station to eliminate a potential rival," Sarah finished grimly. "But there are millions of people here. You're talking about using them as bait." "I'm talking about protecting them by determining who can be trusted before the real crisis begins," Castellanos corrected. "The Terran Dominion didn't survive 10,000 years by assuming that alien species had humanity's best interests at heart. Commander Rebecca Torres, one of Castellanos' senior officers, activated a secondary display showing intelligence reports from across Dominion space. "Commander Chen, we've been monitoring Coalition activities for decades, and their behavior doesn't match the extinction scenario you've described. They've been positioning forces to contain human expansion, not eliminate it." "Containment can be just as effective as extinction," Sarah pointed out. "Yes, but it suggests different motivations and different vulnerabilities," replied Dr. Marcus Webb, whose cybernetic implants indicated expertise in xenopsychology. "A species planning genocide approaches the problem differently than one planning subjugation. The Coalition's current positioning is more consistent with a plan to force humanity into compliance rather than eliminate the species entirely." Kira, who had remained silent since Castellanos' revelations about the Kalani archives, finally spoke up. "If the archives contain disinformation, then my entire people's purpose for the last 3 centuries has been based on lies. We've sacrificed everything to preserve what we believed was crucial historical truth." "Not lies, necessarily," said the 3rd officer, Colonel Diana Nash, whose scarred features spoke of extensive combat experience. "Disinformation campaigns work best when they contain enough truth to be believable. Your archives probably do contain genuine historical data about humanity's first empire and the Great Forgetting, but the information about current Coalition plans could be fabricated." Sarah studied the faces around the table, recognizing the kind of paranoid competence that came from centuries of survival in hostile territory. The Terran Dominion had clearly learned lessons from humanity's First Empire's destruction, but their isolation had also made them suspicious of any alliance that might compromise their independence.
There's another possibility we need to consider, Sarah said slowly.
What if both scenarios are true? What if different factions within the coalition are pursuing different strategies, and our alien allies are genuinely trying to help us prepare for one threat while unknowingly serving another? Castellanos leaned back in her chair, her silver eyes reflecting the holographic displays. Explain. The coalition isn't a monolithic organization. It's made up of dozens of species with different motivations and capabilities. Some might genuinely want to eliminate humanity to prevent another technological disruption, while others might prefer to control and exploit human innovation. Sarah activated the Quantum Forge, allowing its consciousness to access Dominion databases through the room's communication systems. If we can determine which faction is actually in control of the final pacification planning, we might be able to turn them against each other. The Quantum Forge's artificial intelligence began correlating data from Dominion intelligence files with its own archived memories of coalition politics from 10,000 years ago. Within minutes, it had identified patterns that painted a complex picture of internal coalition conflicts. Fascinating, the Forge's synthesized voice said through the room speakers. Current coalition military positioning is consistent with both extinction and subjugation scenarios depending on which species are actually giving the orders. Saurian forces are positioned for total sterilization operations, while cetacean fleets are arranged to provide what could be interpreted as protective containment. The cetaceans? Webb said thoughtfully. Highly intelligent, extremely long-lived, and politically sophisticated. If anyone in the coalition would prefer manipulation over destruction, it would be them. Castellanos finished. Which means our test needs to be more sophisticated than I originally planned. We need to determine not just whether your alien allies can be trusted, but which coalition faction they're actually working for or against. Sarah realized that the situation was even more complex than she had feared. If the coalition was divided against itself, then humanity's survival might depend on successfully navigating not just human politics, but ancient alien conflicts that predated their species' civilization. How do we proceed? She asked. We implement a 3-phase test, Castellanos replied, activating new displays that showed detailed operational plans. Phase 1. We provide your allies with intelligence about Dominion defensive capabilities and see which coalition factions receive that information. Phase 2. We share false information about a planned Dominion offensive and observe coalition responses. Phase 3. We reveal an actual vulnerability and determine whether your allies prioritize human safety or their own objectives. And if they fail the test, then the Terran Dominion withdraws from Earth's conflict and focuses on protecting our own territory, Colonel Nash said bluntly. We've survived for 10 millennia by refusing to trust our fate to alien allies. We won't start now unless we're absolutely certain they can be trusted. Kira's ears flicked in distress. Commander Chen, if we implement this test and my people are revealed to be unwitting pawns in a coalition deception campaign, it could destroy the colony as a species. The coalition won't tolerate information brokers they can't control. Sarah felt the weight of command decisions that affected not just her own species, but potentially dozens of others. The Quantum Forge pulsed in her hands, its artificial intelligence processing scenarios faster than any human mind could follow. There is a fourth option, the Forge announced suddenly. Based on historical patterns from humanity's First Empire, it may be possible to turn the Coalition's own deception campaign against them. Explain! Castellanos demanded. The Coalition's current strategy relies on maintaining the illusion that they are responding to human aggression rather than implementing a long-planned containment operation. If we can provide them with evidence of the kind of technological breakthrough that would justify their final pacification protocols, they will be forced to act openly rather than through manipulation. Sarah began to understand what the artificial intelligence was suggesting. You want us to fake the development of something that would genuinely threaten Coalition dominance? Not fake. Actually develop it, but in a way that appears accidental rather than deliberate. If we can convince the Coalition that humanity has independently rediscovered quantum forging technology, they will abandon their subtle approach and move to direct military action. Which would reveal their true intentions and force our supposed allies to choose sides, Castellanos said with growing excitement. Brilliant, but incredibly dangerous. The danger is manageable if we coordinate the revelation carefully, the Forge continued. We transmit the technological breakthrough from a location that the Coalition will feel compelled to attack immediately, while simultaneously deploying defensive systems to protect human colonies that they intended to preserve for later control. Torres brought up tactical projections showing how such an operation might unfold. If we stage the breakthrough here at Bastion Station, the Coalition will have to commit significant forces to eliminate what they perceive as an existential threat. That will reveal their true military capabilities and force them to abandon any pretense about protecting human colonies. And it will show us whether our alien allies warn us about the impending attack or allow us to be destroyed, Nash added. Sarah studied the projections, recognizing both the elegance and the risks of the proposed strategy. If it worked, they would force the Coalition to reveal their true intentions, while simultaneously demonstrating humanity's renewed technological capabilities to the galaxy. If it failed, Bastion Station and its millions of inhabitants would be destroyed. There's one more factor to consider, Kira said quietly. If the Coalition moves to open military action against humanity, other species that have been waiting to see the outcome will be forced to choose sides. Some of them have their own reasons for wanting to see the Coalition's power broken. A galactic war, Webb said grimly. With humanity as either the catalyst or the first casualty, Sarah activated her personal communicator and sent an encrypted message to Admiral Reyes at Sanctuary Station, outlining the Dominion's concerns and the proposed test scenario. Within hours, she received a response that confirmed her worst fears about the complexity of their situation. Sanctuary Station concurs with Dominion assessment of Coalition faction conflicts, she read from the message. Recent intelligence suggests that cetacean factions are indeed pursuing subjugation rather than extinction, but Saurian extremists are prepared to implement sterilization protocols if containment fails. Window for preventing open conflict closing rapidly. Recommend immediate implementation of revelation strategy. Castellanos leaned forward, her expression intense. Commander, you need to understand what you're asking us to risk. The Terran Dominion has protected millions of refugees from dozens of species over 10 millennia. If this plan fails, all of them die along with us. And if we don't implement it, they die anyway when the Coalition decides that the Rim territories represent too much of a threat to tolerate, Sarah replied. At least this way, we force the conflict to happen on our terms rather than theirs. The Quantum Forge pulsed with increasing intensity as its artificial intelligence calculated probability matrices for various strategic options. The optimal approach involves staged revelation of quantum forging capabilities, beginning with communication technologies and escalating to defensive applications. This will allow us to gauge Coalition responses while gradually demonstrating humanity's renewed potential. How long do we have? Castellanos asked. Based on current Coalition fleet movements, approximately 6 weeks before they reach optimal positioning for either a final pacification or a protection through containment operation, Sarah replied, consulting the Forge's tactical assessments. Then we begin immediately. Castellanos stood and activated the command center's general communication system. All department heads to battle stations Alpha. This is not a drill. The Terran Dominion is implementing Revelation Protocol as of now. As alarm klaxons began sounding throughout Bastion Station, Sarah realized that she had just committed humanity to a course of action that would either restore her species to galactic prominence or result in its complete destruction. The Vulpine girl who had approached her in a frontier cantina had set in motion events that would reshape the balance of power throughout the galaxy. The Quantum Forge glowed brightly in her hands as its consciousness accessed manufacturing systems throughout Dominion space, beginning the process of rebuilding technologies that had been lost for 10,000 years. Within days, humanity would once again possess the capabilities that had made them the galaxy's dominant species. Whether they would survive long enough to use those capabilities remained to be seen. The war for humanity's future was about to begin, and Sarah Chen found herself at the center of conflicts that had been building for millennia. The children of Earth's fire were finally ready to reclaim their birthright among the stars, but the price of that reclamation might be higher than anyone had imagined. In cantinas across Coalition space, other conversations were beginning as various species received intelligence about technological breakthroughs in the Rim territories. Some would choose to support humanity's return to power, others would align with the Coalition's containment efforts, and still others would attempt to exploit the chaos for their own advancement. The galaxy would never be the same again, and it had all started with a Vulpine girl who looked at a human woman, turned to her friends, and announced that the prophecies were finally being fulfilled.